Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Dave, your host of Boiled as an Owl. Welcome to episode 9, where I'm going to talk a little bit further on step 4 and some key points about step 4 in inventory. And I'm going to do a few of these moving forward. So there's going to be a few episodes just based on our inventory process. It's a big deal, and we need to do it in order to truly have a breakthrough in our sobriety. And having this breakthrough is so crucial because we have a program based on willingness, honesty, and openness. So the inventory process is crucial in that it allows us to address a lot of our deficits. And from what I'm going to present moving forward in this episode is mostly, obviously, my experience. You're tuning in, you're hearing what I've been dealing with and what I've been going through. But I also talk a lot about what the program's about and how necessary it is to do our steps and to truly have our step 1 be this complete and utter defeat and honesty that we can no longer control our drinking or our drugging, no matter how hard we tried to control all the parameters, whether that be drinking at a certain hour, only drinking a certain alcohol, whether it's I'm only going to drink beer, or maybe I'm only going to drink wine or brandy, and maybe I'll only have the hard stuff on the weekends. But the pursuit of every alcoholic inevitably is to drink like a normal human being. And that doesn't happen once the crossover happens. Even if you don't cross over into alcoholism, I don't think that anybody who's dealing with a lot of the emotional components of their lives are never really going to drink normally. Because I feel like a lot of people drink in the beginning. It's drinking to have fun, and it's drinking to be convivial, and you're going to parties and you're having a blast and you're doing all this fun stuff. But at some point, drinking doesn't equate to fun any longer. It becomes a job. I know even when I wanted to party or I wanted to go see Phish shows or go to live concerts, I had to make sure I had the nips, and I had to make sure that I had the alcohol in the car to make sure that I could get drunk the way I wanted to, so I didn't have to pay those crazy prices at the garden. And one of my exes, she would bring nips in hidden in all sorts of areas, and we would just get loaded at shows, and nothing was fun unless we were drunk. As I've been making these episodes, I've really been keen on looking at all these things that I've been doing and these beliefs that I have. And I'm starting to question a lot of my own beliefs. And the reason being is that I'm being forced to really look at myself again under a microscope. And it's that piece of our step program, step 4, that the microscope comes out, because we need to develop such honesty with ourselves that we can no longer kid ourselves with any issues that we have. And that requires time, that requires patience, that requires consistency, that requires dedication. You need to have all those facets in your life, developing at whatever stage you're going to develop at, but ultimately developing them, because without those touchstones, it would be really hard for us to make any improvements in our life and in our sobriety. So, again, we spoke about it last week. Resentment is the chief activator of alcoholics. It's the replaying of the trauma, the pain, the fear, the anxiety. It's the consistency of that. So we're consistent in a lot of things prior to our sobriety and our recovery, but we're just consistent in all the wrong things. We're consistent in all of the fear-based behaviors, the anxiety, the resentments, the jealousy, the self-pity, the anger, the intolerance, the prejudice, all those motives that we used or utilized to survive, to justify our lives, our drinking, and the abnormal thought processes that we had that caused us to falter and get stunted in our growth. So we've got these resentments on paper. We're listing the people, the institutions, the principles with whom we're angry at. And in most cases, we're dissecting that because we're writing down the people on the left-hand column, and then we're writing down the wrongs, the perceived wrongs, whether they're real or not, doesn't matter. And then after we do that in our right-hand column, a few columns over, we then go and list what these real or fancied resentments affected. Did they affect our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambition, our personal relationships, and our sex relationships? Did we get really angry and hurt? And did we get to a point where, we had this burning rage and burning desire to get back at these people that we think hurt us? And for the most part, in my experience, it was my lack of being able to speak up for myself and talk to the people that I thought hurt me, and ultimately harboring all this anger, frustration, anxiety, and pain, and always being like, it's no big deal. I'll just let this pass because you know what? I'm bigger than that. And meanwhile, I'm sitting and seething and having so much anger and hatred boiling up inside of me. So when I could put all this down on paper and I could actually look at it like a blueprint schematic of how my brain was processing information, I could look at it and go, wow, I'm seeing another pattern developing. I'm seeing my own anger. I'm seeing my own resentments. I'm seeing my own problematic thinking that leads me down the road to a drink. And for an alcoholic, the first drink is death. And a lot of people go, well, the first drink doesn't kill anybody. It's not that the first drink kills you. The first drink starts the whole episodic insanity all over again. Because as soon as you put the alcohol in the system, you start the craving, you start the mental obsession, and it starts all over again. And before you know it, you're binge drinking on the weekend, you're blacking out, you're getting DWIs, DUIs, you're causing a lot of pain and frustration for your family. You're getting into fights with your partner, you're with your parents, and you're turning into a bitter prick. And that's the insanity of the first drink. Every time you drink, the same shit happens, but you keep trying to convince yourself that you're going to change and that it's going to be different this time. Until we learn what it is that makes us tick, we're going to keep repeating the same bullshit over and over and over. And that's the definition of insanity. We do the same thing over and over, expecting different results, knowing full well with our track record and our history that every time we proceed to drink, we inevitably lead to the insanity of the binge, the blackout, the brownout, getting so drunk you got an 8-ball in front of you, or you're doing some other kind of drug, because the whole night unfolded in the insanity of the decisions we were making. So we need to have all this stuff on paper because we get to look at it. Every time I do X, I get Y. And every time I think if I just do A or Y, A or X a little bit differently. This time, Y is going to be different. And it never is. It's always the same madness over and over and over. And it's heartbreaking. And that's why when you read the big book, the doctors say the most heartbreaking patient is the alcoholic, because there's nothing we can ever do for them. They need to develop some kind of a spiritual awakening within themselves to help them combat this very real dis-ease. And it's dis-ease. We have all these resentments, and then we have to deal with dishonesty. We're not looking at the big picture, and we're not seeing how dysfunctional our drinking is and all the problematic issues that are caused by our drinking. We're always lying to ourselves. And those that don't recover are usually the people who just can't stop lying to themselves. They're incapable of being honest, and it says so in how it works. And those are the people that don't recover. And dishonesty in a 12-step program has no place. It needs to be eliminated, root and branch. And that's why when we're doing our fourth step and we are writing inventory, on the top of the pages a little prayer that says, God, please remove from me everything that is keeping me from knowing you. As we carve out all these big boulders of resentment and fear and anxiety, we start breaking apart this wall we've created, that we have placed in our lives to keep our spirit, our soul, and our higher power out of the picture, because we're running on self-will. It's so necessary to do inventory, because that allows us to see the depth in which we are holding on to the resentment, first off, and then second off, the amount of dishonesty that we have with ourselves and all the people in our lives. And what's funny is most people know. We think we're fooling everybody, but we're not, because alcoholics tend to have really great enablers in their lives. And the people that usually accompany the alcoholic, if they're not alcoholic themselves, don't understand why this person keeps doing this madness over and over and over again. There comes a tipping point where you lack the capacity to actually make a different decision in the moment. So we have to become brutally honest, and that's step one. Step one is we admitted we were powerless over our addiction. We have to also look at our criticisms. I believe resentments and criticism go hand in hand, because a lot of times what ends up happening is we become very passive aggressive, or when drunk, we could be super aggressive, and we become super critical at the people we tend to have the resentments towards, because we want them to know how horrible they are and how they treated us, and we want them to know that they're bad people. So our criticism is a bad thing to stay in, because it's full of negativity and absolutes, and it does deprive us of our emotional sobriety and peace of mind. The first year of my program, criticism was really hard for me to let go of. I was very self-critical, which is key to criticism. It should only be towards the self, because remember, when you're pointing the finger at someone, you have three pointing back at you. And you also have to remember to stop looking at the speck in someone else's eye and look at the log in your own. If you're constantly looking at everyone else's faults, that means you're not looking at your own, and you're able to spot everyone else's BS because you are pretty much doing the same bullshit. That's why we do this process. We have to become self-critical, but we also have to remember that we need to keep our criticism moral and honest as well. That's the reason we need honesty, because you could sit there all day and beat yourself up and have a poor me pity party all you want. And if you're not being honest with your faults and your assets, then you're going to end up staying in a place where you can't experience any inner peace. Gossip was a huge problem in my family. The women would all get together, and I liked to hang out with the women more than I liked to hang out with the men, because the men were very gruff, unstable emotionally, and just always angry about something. And the women weren't any better, but they were a little bit softer and more approachable. And you got all the good, juicy details about what was going on in everyone's lives when you hung out with the women. I look back at that time now as an adult, and I was like, wow, I must have been doing that on some level just to feel a little bit better than I was feeling in the moment. Criticism leads us into self-pity too. In the last 6 months, I've really been working with self-pity. My biggest form of self-pity is the resentment and self-hatred that I created for myself. That's another problem, is we will compare our sobriety to other people's sobriety, and that's wrong to do too, because we don't know what that person's gone through unless we know them. And yeah, everything might be looking good on the outside, but you never know what's happening on the inside. And some people don't talk about what's really happening. They're honest with their sponsors, but they don't share within the group. I choose to share within the group because when I share, I also get to hear the insanity coming out of my mouth. And I also know how to put the cotton in my mouth and take it out of the ears and listen. I've been dealing with self-pity for a while, and I've been doing inventory around it. And what it is I feel that I'm getting my ass handed to me over and over again, and it's retarding my recovery from all angles, because I'm feeling irritable and discontent. I look at others and they seem like they're very put together and happy, and I'm struggling. And my self-pity also is a reflection of all the poor choices that I made. And I made a lot of good choices too. This last 5 years of sobriety, I've been making good choices. Choices that if I didn't have my sobriety, I don't know if I would be making. So I have to sit with the self-pity, and I have to realize that I'm directing all this self-pity towards God. And it's a trap, because it's self-centered pride. I wouldn't be in some of the predicaments I'm in, because I would have made much better, more aligned spiritual choices that would have been faith-based versus a fear-based choice. As I explain the streets that we're taking here that are necessary for our own development so that we can get rid of our stagnation and whatever is, what do I do when I come up with these character defects? Guess what? I pray. Dear higher power, can you help me to let go of this self-pity? I've recognized that I'm in it. Can you please take it away from me? Because much like my addiction, I tried to move heaven and earth, and I realized I wasn't God. But you, in one day, one night of my true demoralization and defeat, you removed my will to drink. And I tried like 20 years to try to stop drinking. Jealousy is another piece of inventory that I'm doing right now too, because I realized that I was looking at some of my friends in the program, and I was actually jealous of all the things they were receiving in their sobriety. People were getting their families back. People were homeless, and all of a sudden they're all over the world doing all this cool shit. And there's other people who were on death's door, and they now have these vibrant, healthy lives. The promises kept coming true for them so quickly. And I got stuck in the slowly lane. I'm in the slow lane, like sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Let's put Dave in the sometimes slowly category, because we need to make his brain a little chop suey-ish to make sure that we can break through all the bullshit and the barriers and all the armor that he's put up. And I laugh at my higher power, because I'm like, wow. For example, today I wanted to record this particular show, and I ended up recording twice. And it was 45, 50 minutes each time, and none of it ever recorded. And I just realized tonight why, because I had pressed a button incorrectly and didn't realize it was pressed, because I wanted to get this show out so badly, because it's been a week since I put anything out. And I got so angry and so frustrated, like I wanted to explode and break something. I yelled like a lunatic, but I also yelled it out because in the past I would have just stuffed it in. So I yelled it out, and then I decided to move a muscle and change the thought. So rather than try to sit at this recording studio of mine and try to do it a third time, I laughed at God. And then I laughed at myself, and I left my apartment bitching and moaning. I got in my car and I just yelled the F word at the top of my lungs. I felt like my throat was going to explode. And then I started laughing because I am still triggered by dumb shit, because again, everyone else is doing this podcast stuff and nobody else is having any problems. Why is it always me? It always happens this way. It's always like this. I can't believe I'm always the one, so I started diving into the self-pity from a whole different perspective. And then on my ride into my office, I started getting into my blind spots of jealousy, because I'm just like, oh, everyone else gets to do this and it's so easy for everybody. And it was so easy the last 8 times. And now all of a sudden, what am I not good enough, God? What the heck? That's the bullshit that ends up happening. And I think a lot of people go through that, but I'm sharing it because I really am honest about how things are going. My sobriety has been really neat, but it's also been very messy at times. And there are days I wake up and I struggle, and I have to remember to have gratitude. I have to remember to reach out to someone in the program, and I have to get outside of myself and do some service, because our 3-legged program is fellowship, service, and 12 steps. The 12 steps, that's our foundation, and then we have all our other legs. But like when you start doing your inventory, you get to see how selfish and self-centered you really are. And once you realize that the self-centeredness is a real issue, you have to pray. The treatment is prayer and service. You need to get outside of yourself, and you need to go help others, whether it's another alcoholic, a family member, doesn't matter. Just go help someone and be of service. Whatever you need in that moment, go do it. When you give, you receive. That's just the spiritual axiom. That's why this program works. It's a law of attraction based program. And if you change your perceptions, your prejudices, and your misaligned thinking, and you trade it in for faith-based thinking and aligning yourself with higher vibrational thought processes of gratitude and happiness and joy, just for happiness and joy's sake and gratitude's sake, you start changing your neuron patterns in your brain, and you bring on new thoughts, new behaviors, and new actions. The more you take action to fire your neurons and create new plasticity by taking actions that you normally wouldn't, move a muscle, change a thought, you're changing your thoughts because you're moving differently. If I hadn't run out of time today, I would have gone and done a couple push-ups, maybe would have gone for a run, maybe would have done some burpees, just to displace the energy. Our body stores all this stuff within itself, and a lot of times we're drinking because the body and the mind are uncomfortable. And if we can actually get into places where we can stretch, move, play, or do some movement specific exercises that will help us to get inside our bodies, we can shift all of that. The way we look at jealousy, self-pity, criticism, anger, resentments, it's all necessary because it gives us a deeper look at our functioning belief system. And when we can question these beliefs and change them, we become better people, less prone to stagnation. We achieve a higher energetic frequency, and we put all that love into the universe, and then our higher powers give it right back to us. I believe that once I stop struggling and I surrender, I'm going to be more aligned with my actions and my beliefs. And that's why I love AA. I believe, regardless of addiction, anyone can use this program and the steps to navigate life a lot easier. And that's my spiel for today. I hope that you're enjoying the topics. If you want to give me any feedback, you can send me an email. There's a link on the page itself that says fan mail, I believe. And again, if you find that there's some kind of legitimacy and intelligence with the way in which I'm presenting the material, feel free to buy me a coffee. That's awesome. I drink coffee. I love it. There's also a tab to support the show. This show is self-supporting in its own affairs. I am doing this with love. I don't expect anything in return, but honestly, this stuff lights me up, and it's so great to know that on some level, the very things that I've gone through could help somebody else get through them too, because there were so many times when my friends and my sponsor got me through a lot of the pain and frustration and anxiety I was feeling. So this is my 12th step work as we bring the message out to other people who are still sick and suffering. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you have a really awesome day, night, wherever time zone you're in. And I'll end with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Next episode, we'll be covering a few more pieces of step 4, and we'll help you maneuver your sobriety on a whole different level. Have a good one.